The old warehouse on the edge of town had not seen the light of a mechanic's torch in over 2 decades. Dust had settled thick on every surface, cobwebs draped across forgotten shelves, and the smell of oil and rust clung to the air like a memory that refused to fade. Somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of grime, a canvas tarp covered a shape so distinctive, so dramatically sculpted, that even under all that neglect, it whispered of former glory. Workers who entered that day were not prepared for what they were about to uncover. When the tarp finally came away, the silhouette of the 1972 Buick Riviera boattail emerged from the darkness, and for a moment, everyone in the room stood completely still. This was not just a car. This was an American legend that had been swallowed by time, and now it was time to bring it back. The car had been sitting in that godown for over 50 years, untouched, unloved, and slowly surrendering to the relentless grip of decay. Paint that was once rich and vibrant had faded to a ghostly chalky shell. The chrome that had once caught every passing sunbeam now wore a thick coat of corrosion. The interior, which had once welcomed its passengers with fine vinyl seating and a thoughtfully designed cockpit, was cracked, faded, and falling apart. The engine, the magnificent 455 cubic inch V8 that had once rumbled with authority and confidence, sat silent and seized, like a sleeping giant waiting for someone brave enough to wake it. But before the hands of restoration could begin their work, it was important to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The 1972 Buick Riviera was no ordinary automobile. It was the product of General Motors at its most ambitious and daring, a machine born from the creative vision of GM's legendary styling chief Bill Mitchell, and shaped into reality by designer John Houlihan and his team at Studio X. The Riviera name had been part of the Buick family since 1963, when GM introduced it as their answer to the highly successful Ford Thunderbird. The goal was simple but bold: create America's first true personal luxury car, something that sat above the ordinary and below the exotic, a car that made a statement without screaming it. For its first 2 generations, the Riviera delivered on that promise with clean, elegant lines and a sense of restrained luxury that automotive journalists praised consistently. But by 1970, GM was ready to do something far more dramatic. The 3rd generation Riviera, introduced for the 1971 model year, was unlike anything that had come before it. Designers looked to the classic Auburn 851 boat-tail speedsters of the 1930s for inspiration, as well as the 1963 Corvette Stingray, and what emerged was a shape so polarizing, so visually aggressive, that it divided the automotive world down the middle. The rear of the car tapered to a sharp point, mimicking the hull of a racing boat slicing through water. A massive wraparound rear window of curved glass swept dramatically over the tail, creating a greenhouse effect that was unlike anything seen on an American production car before or since. It was too wild to be called classy in the traditional sense, yet too interesting and too bold to be ignored. People either loved it passionately or rejected it completely, but nobody could look away. The 1972 model year brought refinements to this radical design without softening its essential character. The ventilation louvers that had appeared on the rear deck lid of the 1971 model were removed, a decision that improved the car's overall cleanliness of line. A new egg crate grille replaced the horizontal slat design of the previous year, giving the front end a more structured and sophisticated look. Vinyl body side moldings were added along the flanks, lending the profile a sense of length and visual flow. The taillights were redesigned with a cleaner, unlined appearance. These were subtle changes, but they worked together to sharpen the overall presentation of a car that was already visually stunning. Under the vast expanse of that long sculptural hood sat the heart of the machine, Buick's 455 cubic inch, 7.5-liter V8 engine, now rated at 250 horsepower in standard trim and 260 horsepower in the Grand Sport specification under the new net power rating system that had been introduced that year. The engine was paired with a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic automatic transmission, sending power to the rear wheels through a conventional drivetrain that was built for smooth, effortless American highway cruising. Torque output was a muscular 380 pound-feet, which meant that despite the car's considerable weight, it moved with genuine authority when called upon. The base price in 1972 was $5,150, which was a significant sum in those days but positioned the Riviera squarely in the personal luxury segment alongside its rivals the Oldsmobile Toronado and the Cadillac Eldorado. That year, General Motors produced exactly 33,728 examples of the 1972 Riviera, accounting for roughly 5% of all Buick production for that model year. The standard equipment list was generous, including power front disc brakes, power steering, remote control outside rearview mirror, dual horns, deluxe steering wheel, and all federally mandated safety features. An optional electrically operated sunroof was available, as was the Grand Sport Performance package for buyers who wanted a sharper driving experience. Inside, passengers were greeted by a choice of all-vinyl bench seating or a 60/40ths notchback front arrangement, or bucket seats with a center console. The design followed the Riviera line's traditional approach of creating a driving environment that felt personal and focused, though critics noted that by this generation, the interior shared too much with the LeSabre and Centurion models, lacking the unique sense of occasion that the 1963 original had delivered so brilliantly. But the exterior, that extraordinary exterior with its boat-tail rear and sweeping glass, made up for whatever the cabin may have lacked in exclusivity. Now, 50-plus years after it rolled off the assembly line in Flint, Michigan, this particular example had been pulled from its long slumber and placed in the hands of a restoration team determined to honor its legacy. The process was methodical and deeply satisfying to witness. The team began with a thorough exterior cleaning, stripping away decades of accumulated grime to reveal the extent of the rust and paint damage beneath. Body panels were carefully assessed, damaged sections treated, and rust was chased out from every corner with patient, precise work. The engine was disassembled completely, each component inspected, cleaned, measured, and either restored or replaced. Bearings, seals, gaskets, the carburetor, the fuel system, the ignition components, everything was gone through with a level of care and attention that matched the importance of the machine being revived. The interior was stripped to bare metal, and new materials faithful to the original specification were sourced and installed. Chrome was replated, bringing back the mirror-bright finish that had made this car so striking when it first left the showroom. The body was prepared with multiple rounds of blocking and sanding until the surface was smooth enough to accept a fresh coat of paint. And then came the color. A bold, vibrant Arancio Orange that caught the light with an intensity that made the car's dramatic lines come alive in a way that photographs could barely capture. When it was all done, when the last bolt was torqued and the last panel buffed to a mirror finish, the 1972 Buick Riviera boattail stood in the restoration bay looking precisely as it must have looked when it was new, proud, dramatic, unmistakably American, and unlike anything else on the road. The boattail rear still commanded the space it occupied. The egg crate grille still projected confidence. The massive V8, now breathing freely and turning over with a deep, smooth idle, sounded exactly as a piece of American automotive history should sound. A car that had spent over half a century forgotten in a warehouse had been given back its dignity, its presence, and its purpose. The story of this 1972 Buick Riviera boattail is not just a story about metal and paint and chrome. It is a story about the refusal to let greatness disappear quietly, about the belief that things built with passion and vision deserve to be preserved and celebrated. It is a story about the golden age of American automobile design, when engineers and stylists alike reached for the extraordinary and occasionally, magnificently, achieved it. If you want to see more incredible restoration stories like this one, and witness more forgotten legends being brought back to life, then be sure to like, share, and subscribe to CarPoint and History. Every video is a journey through automotive time, and the best stories are still to come.